Okay, so I think we can go ahead and get started. Firstly, a very important thing before we get started, a lot of people were asking if this is recorded. Many people regarding time zones weren't able to make it. So yes, there'll be a recording which we'll be sharing and making available to everyone who couldn't make it. Firstly, I want to thank everyone for joining this evening. My name is Moshe Reichman from ChabadMatch, and this is a very unique event for us. For years, we focused on organizing events for singles, specifically meet Shadchanim events, which Baruch Hashem have led to many engagements, but there's always a feeling that there should be more events specifically organized for Shadchanim, those that work tirelessly and many times without reward to make Shidduchim happen. When we refer to Shadchanim, we're not referring only to those that quote unquote, advertise themselves as Shadchanim, but to anyone involved and caring to make Shidduchim happen. The Rebbe once described the attribute needed to be a Shadchan as one who is a Baal Meretz, one with energy and motivation to help make a Shidduch. And every one of us joining today is making some of that effort. And we wish you all a lot of Hatzlacha in Shidduchim. We're very honored to have Rabbi Dr. Yossi Ives here today to share how we can help our singles get married. And we have to put a stress on the get married. The goal is not to get singles on dates. The goal is to get singles married. And we're going to hear about that this evening. Rabbi Dr. Ives is an expert on dating. He's a qualified life coach and the author of 2 books on coaching psychology, including relationship coaching. He's the co-founder of datewell.org, which has tremendous resources, which I encourage all of you to utilize. And he's worked with hundreds of singles, helping them towards marriage. We've collected some questions before the chat from many of you, which we've shared with Rabbi Ives. And he's divided those questions into 6 different categories, which we'll be going through this evening. If you have any other questions during the discussion, please send it in the chat and we'll see if we can include it in the session. And before we get started on the 6 different categories, Rabbi Ives, the floor is yours. Yeah.
Well, hopefully not just the floor. Maybe I'll end up on it by the end of this. Let's see what happens. Good evening. I share the admiration for the work of Shadchanim, both formal and informal Shadchanim and Shadchaniyos. It's without question the main way in which people are creating families, which is the future of Am Yisrael. So I have a lot of respect, but I'm going to try not to be too respectful. I'm going to have a robust, open, heartfelt conversation about what I see is going on and how we can work together to get more people to the place they want to go. So, is there a shidduch crisis? And if yes, what can we do about it? So, very briefly, let me set out my approach. I've explained this to many people. If somebody has been active in dating for any reasonable period of time, meaning to say, depending on who it is, it would vary 4 or 5 people, certainly for 6, 7 people, and it's not going very far. It's clear that it's not taken off. It's already time to ask why. What is it that the person could do with understanding about themselves or about dating that is likely to help them? And the more that the person is dating and is not getting the results that they want, especially if it's clear that it's not going anywhere, they're having really very little success, they're making very little progress, then we really have an obligation to ask what's going on and not wait until the situation has progressed for sometimes many years and a lot of upset and heartache. But when I say why, I don't mean that the people have some kind of giant problem. The reasons why people get stuck are so small that sometimes it's laughable. you're expecting some giant reason, something really big that needs to be addressed. And usually it's something minor. It doesn't need any big intervention. It just needs some kind of awareness so that we can incorporate that into our thinking so we can be smarter about what we do. But Kolzman, we don't know this. We keep going around in circles and we keep making the same mistakes. And unfortunately, when it comes to shidduchim, because of the nature of what it is, it doesn't take very much for things to get derailed. Because a person is making such an overwhelming commitment, it takes really something quite small to set the person off. I can't agree to give up my whole life to somebody else, even if what it is that's bothering them is relatively minor. So just to be clear, one doesn't need to be perfect to get married. This is not about trying to solve everybody's problems. It's only focusing on the one thing, and it almost always is just one thing, and usually one small thing that is the reason why we're in trouble. And so let's not waste time trying to make them perfect and get them straightened out on every single front. Let's just figure out that one thing which is causing trouble, and let's figure out how we're not going to let that happen. But the reality is that if we don't, we see this go on for years sometimes, including decades. And it breaks the heart, because not only for them and for their family, but all the people they're dating and upsetting and really causing traumas because they're dysfunctional in their dating, and other people are paying the price. And we who are setting them up on dates are participating in this and are part of this tragedy that unfolds every single day as people putting their heart and soul into dating, only to find it was all never going to go anywhere because this person is just not in a place where they're able to go anywhere. And yet, had we known what was going on, had we intervened, it could have been a very different ending. And I will give you some examples in a minute. So if this line gets cut off, and if it does, I know it was intentional. I should warn, I'm English, I have a strange sense of humor. Okay, so if there's one call to action, it's we must stop feeding the problem. We have to find a better way of addressing this. In other words, if somebody is struggling, the answer to them is not another shidduch. The answer is an answer to their struggle. Sending them on a shidduch is unfair to them. It's also deeply unfair to the person who's doing that, including people who are traveling literally around the world to meet them in the good faith that this person is dateable and is coming to this with a realistic potential to get married. And so I don't know if I sound sincere, but it breaks my heart every day to watch what's going on. And as a father, it terrifies me that my children will end up in a situation where they're giving weeks of their life to date somebody who's not intending, because he's unable to treat my daughter properly and give them a fair chance, because they're broken, they've no idea what they're doing, and it's only going to end up in heartache. So let me give you a couple of illustrations and then we'll go to the topics. Ladies and gentlemen, today, not yesterday, Reb Moshe here knows because he spoke to me minutes after I ended this call and I was genuinely horrified. Today, I spoke to a Hasidic young man, a frummer guy, a person with Yiras Shamayim. I can't say any details lest anybody figures out. I'm not even going to give this person's age, just suffice it to say he's not 23. And I asked him what's known in the lingo as Messiach Lefi Tumoy. I never thought I was asking a particularly unusual question. I asked this question to everybody. How many people have you dated? And he told me 90. I said, you mean like 19? He says, no, 90. So I said to him, and ladies and gentlemen, please forgive me. I hope this is not offensive. But I said to him, that means you must have dealt with dozens of shadchanim. Did not one of them say to you, 90 people Why are you speaking to me? There's a problem. Why should we send you on the 91st person? Why? What is the point even? Not one shadchan ever said to him, my friend, this isn't working. Not one. I said to him, you have a mashpia, right? I said, what did your mashpia say? Mashpia told me not to give up, not to be discouraged, to keep going. Mara dahai olma. Really? Is this mashpia got achrayas for all the women who've been insulted and been hurt and had their time wasted? So this is just not good. Okay? Somebody who is in that situation needs some sense, needs to figure it out. And I want to tell you this, and this is between us, because I know we're just 2 or 3 people and it's completely secret. We heard it's not being recorded, and so nobody else is going to know what I just tell you. But I told him some very tough things, which we'll get to later, what he's going to have to understand about himself in order to get married. And I told him, if you're makabel, what I'm telling you, you will be engaged in a matter of weeks. The guy who for years has gone nowhere. There was no reason for it. I'm going to beg the people, when they have success, to come on this forum and reveal their faces and tell their stories. So the people don't think it's propaganda from Yossi Ives. That there was no reason for this to happen. He could have been married 5 years ago. Nobody had even questioned him. Nobody had said to him, look, we got to figure this out. There's a problem here. This is not a bad person. He's the opposite. He's an edel person. If you saw him, there's nothing not to like. I immediately started thinking about who are the people I want to introduce him to. There's nothing off-putting about this person. But there's something broken and he doesn't know. Story number 2. About 3 weeks ago, a young man came to me and explained to me that a shadchan had told him he needs to speak to me. Why? Because he keeps basically rejecting women. He'll go out with somebody once, twice, not for me. Always, the appearance is a problem. And the shadchan had somebody, I won't mention names, somebody who knows about these things and understands that we can't let these things roll, and says, really, what you're doing doesn't make sense. So I asked this person, you have met 10 people in quick succession within a period of like a year and a half, and each of them you said no. Did you see pictures of these people? Yes, he did. I said, what did you think about them when you saw? I thought it was okay. So how can it be 10 times out of 10, you were wrong? What is it, you're blind? Doesn't make sense. And without going into excruciating detail, we'll come to some of these things later in relation to some of the topics. This is a person who had some internal barrier. There are a variety of reasons why people have inner barriers that make it hard for them to give themselves away, for them to surrender their independence, for them to give everything up for another person. As much as they want it, they find it really hard. They don't know they find it hard. They think they want it, but there's something stopping them. And they have no idea, nor do their parents, nor do the shadchanim, no one. I said, you have something in you that's stopping you from putting yourself forward. You take one step forward and one step back. You're basically treading water, going around in circles. I said, the reason why you are so fixated on appearance and nothing is ever good enough is not because there's anything wrong with those people, because you chose to date them and you chose to date them knowing what they look like. But that you are so discouraged within yourself because you don't think you can do it, that you essentially are making it impossible for anybody to be good enough. That you're expecting a person to be so ravishingly beautiful to compensate for your own inadequacies. This is never going to work. Never in the history of the planet has anybody ever succeeded using that strategy. And I explained to him that the person he last dated was actually very suitable for him based upon what I could tell. And I explained to him why. And I said his rejection of her was his own issue, nothing to do with her. I'm giving to this in a few sentences, what took me an hour and a half to explain to the guy. But the bottom line is he was makabel because he knew it was true. That was Thursday night. But Motzei Shabbos, I traveled from Pomona to Crown Heights and gave up my Tisha B'Av to speak to a bunch of singles in Crown Heights. And I told them what happened with this young man. I told it to them in more detail than I'm telling you, exactly what I told him. And I said to them, in front of 100+ people, that I promise you that if this person acts what he said he's going to do, he will be engaged in 2 weeks. Well, ladies and gentlemen, they're couple now. Okay? I even got a message from the young lady saying, I think your prediction is going to come right. We need to understand that people are going round in circles for no reason. There's nothing wrong, but there's something they don't see, they don't understand, and they are just falling down over and over and over. And I want to say one more thing, because it shook me. The young lady in question was perturbed that this guy had told her to her face she wasn't attractive enough and he didn't like her, and that's why he's ending it. And all of a sudden, because he spoke to some Shugana in Pomona, now all of a sudden he's interested again. She thought he was just basically experimenting on her with my ideas. So she gave him a very hard time. She said, you told me you didn't find me attractive. Why should I put myself through this? You don't like me, you don't like me. I can live with that. But why do I want to embarrass myself and humiliate myself? Why do you figure out your issues? And Bazeh Haloshen, I heard this from her, not from him. So I know it's absolutely true because she had no reason to repeat this. She didn't know the full background. She said that he told her, I want you to know, despite what I told you a few days ago, when you walked from your apartment to my car, you blew my mind. I was totally taken by you. She said, I don't understand. The same person who 3 days ago you said was no good. He said, I don't know how to explain it, but yes. That is somebody's child who was rejected for no reason, right? I'm telling you, they are profoundly in love with each other. I happen to know because I dealt with it. There is nothing wrong with them. But here was another one that was going to go down the drain. And luckily, one of you esteemed Shatchonim understood that this person needed some sense, needed to figure it out, instead of just going to the next person and the next person. Because he could have done this for another 20 or 30 B'nai Yisrael, put them through this agony of rejection for nothing. So, in conclusion, when you are coming across somebody and it seems clear, to use the Aramaic expression, Devorim Begoy, something seems up, doesn't make sense. Why is this person doing this? Is a nice person. How can they be so quick to reject people? What we need to say, sir or young lady, we don't mean to disrespect you. We don't mean to hurt your feelings. This is nothing personal, but it seems like there's a problem here. We want to help you, but you've got to be ready to be helped. And what achrayus do I have to go and put another person in the firing line when I know what you've done to the past 10 people, rejected them with such ease? So I would appeal to you. We need to work together with the parents and with the young people themselves to say, we want your happiness. We're not trying to give excuses to not give you a shidduch, but you need to trust us. Part of our concern for you is that your next shidduch should actually stick. I have dealt with the most difficult people who I was told could not possibly work. And if they were willing to take on board what was being told to them, they succeeded. They succeeded. We have to believe it can be done because I'm telling you it can be done. In fact, with this, and I'm going to end on this, with this couple that just got engaged. I wrote to them and I said, I need you to go on video. I said, people need to, you don't realize what an inspiration you are. We need to get people to talk about this. It's not a myth, right? There is a solution to this epidemic, and it's in our hands. Rabbi.
Thank you. On that topic of commitment, people that have an issue with commitment, what are the let's say the symptoms that can give us an indication that someone is facing such issues? We don't want to wait obviously for them to go out with 50, 60 girls before they come for help. We'd like to do it even maybe after 2 or 3 times. So what can the shadchanim use to identify people that have this issue of commitment, to try and guide them to get support as soon as possible?
Thank you. I'm going to read a few words from 2 of the questions. I didn't write down who asked the questions, but I found it very instructive. So one of the questions was, it seems that for many singles, the longer they are in shidduchim, the harder it is for them, and the harder it is for them to commit. I don't know if you understood. I'm going to read that again. It seems that for many singles, the longer they are in shidduchim, the harder it is for them. My friends, it's the other way around. The reason why they're in shidduchim longer is because they have a hard time committing. It's literally the other way around. Their struggle to commit is why they're still single, in this case, and not because they're still single, that's why they're struggling to commit. The next question. I just see that many singles, especially the older ones, seem happy and then get cold feet at the end. The emphasis on especially the older ones. They're older ones because they're struggling. It's obvious, but not to the people who wrote the question, it seems. We need to become more attuned to this. The assumption is that the reason why singles are older is because nobody's offered them to marry them yet. Well, of course, you need someone to want to marry you for you to get married, but that would be a very questionable conclusion. So we need to understand that people who are struggling to commit are stuck. The reasons why they're stuck will come to in a second. And if people are stuck, then the number one thing you can do to help them is help them to get unstuck, not put them in front of another shidduch for them to fail yet again. So let's just understand that the issue of commitment and the difficulties around that are quite diverse. If I were to go into a full exposition about this, we would spend at least an hour, just looking at the different reasons why people struggle with commitment. There are people who are dismissive, people who are fearful, and within these there are multiple different types. So let me just summarize it in a very simplistic way. What marriage is this. We were once babies and enjoyed a unique bond with our primary caregiver, our mother. A unique bond that is almost, if you think about it, incredible. Our entire lives depend on this person. Even if for a few hours we were abandoned, we would not survive. We have this uniquely close attachment that allows us to get everything pretty much we have as we, in fact, our entire growing up years are unpacking what we got in those very early months and years as a small child. But because we get bigger, it becomes a bit embarrassing to be holding on to mummy's skirt all day. So we learn to grow up and to find our own independence. But we realized that was the most special moment we ever had, that unique relationship. And we look to recreate it. And the only way to do it as an adult is through marriage. And so marriage is when you have the great joy of that closeness, but also a willingness to give up your independence and become once again labasa echad. And that's why the pasuk says, Al kein yazav ishas aviv es imo. You're having to give up on your independence, on your past, And that for many people, because of how radical it is, which is what makes it so beautiful, is also capable of generating all kinds of negative reactions. And sometimes those reactions are mild and they just need a little bit of support. And other times those reactions can be more severe, even to extreme cases where people can be literally hospitalized out of sheer terror. They are totally overcome by trepidation in a way that is almost incomprehensible. And we need to be able to recognize when somebody's reasons for wanting to back away don't seem to add up. They don't seem to add up. For example, all of a sudden the person's smile is bothering them. Like miracle, on date number 9, out of nowhere, all of a sudden this thing has started to bother them. It should be an immediate signal. I believe on my website, I've got a whole list of signals how you can tell somebody's suffering from a commitment issue. These things are scientifically validated. It's easy to explain. I don't think now's the time to go into the minute detail. But let me just say this. This is probably the most useful thing I can say about this if we move on to the next topic. To the person who is experiencing this fear, this apprehension, it is absolutely real. They, at that moment, feel, to use the Lashon of Chazal, Pischoy shel Gehenim pasuach lefonov, they feel genuine terror and dread. If I were to pull out a gun and put it to your forehead, you would freeze. That's how they feel at that moment. The very person they've had 9 dates with, and in some respects really like and enjoy their company, all of a sudden turns into a ferocious tiger and is threatening their very existence. And nobody can understand it and think they're being ridiculous. But they don't understand. If you put this person and connected them to a machine, you would see their blood pressure levels, you would see their stress levels. It's real. They are overcome by fear. So we need to be able to help people to see and understand what's going on, to validate what they're going through, but also recognize and help them to recognize there is no actual tiger, there is no actual gun. In the end, it is in their imagination, and you cannot allow a fantasy tiger to ruin your life. And I'm telling you that you'll be amazed. 99.9% of the time, you will solve the problem in this way. No therapy, no miracle drugs, simply helping them to understand why they are going through what they're going through.
Thank you. So that leads us to the second topic, which is emotional connection. So the question is that was asked was, when do we expect the emotional connection to come? And how can a shadchan assist the single with it, besides suggesting compliments on things the other one says? And in addition, another question on that topic is, after how many dates of no chemistry should a shidduch get dropped? When do we realize that it's a time to say no, if there's no emotional connection?
Okay, I'm going to say some very tough things. I hope this doesn't destroy my reputation. It's pretty shaky already. I told you about this guy who met 90 women. From guy, Hasidic guy, edler person. Let me tell you why he did this, and what I told him today, and what he has accepted is true and is ready to take on the chin the consequences of what I told him. And I'm absolutely guaranteeing you that every single one of you knows somebody exactly like I'm describing. Maybe not to the same extreme, but ultimately the same problem. There's something I call resonance. I made up the word because I couldn't find a better word to describe what about dating nobody ever talks about. When we speak about dating, we talk about the verbal part. I'll call it the chitzonius. Opening the door, holding a conversation, choosing a suitable hotel, doing all the practical things that are necessary to get to know each other and to manage the process properly. This is all true, but that is 50%. The other 50% nobody talks about. And I call it resonance. And that is the unspoken part where people begin to send out subliminal signals to each other that starts a cascade, a cyclical process in which people begin to feel somehow they're inching emotionally closer and closer together. And I explain to people, and I have to be brief because we have so many topics, but I explain to people that when you like somebody, your eyelashes flicker at twice the rate than if you don't. So even though the person dating, both people don't, I've never heard of this, are not paying attention to the other person's eyelashes and not even consciously aware of it, that is having an impact. It is an actual fact that the body excretes pheromones, which is an actual oil, which actually has a smell. You can test it with a machine that the other person picks up on without obviously realizing it. And it all creates this entirely kind of subconscious and automatic process of getting closer to somebody. Now, obviously, if there's something about them that pushes you away, that's not going to overcome that. In fact, it probably wouldn't happen if there wasn't already some interest, because that is what's generated when you begin to like somebody. You don't like somebody who says things you find hurtful. But we need to understand that the body language, they have measured the amount of people smile when they like somebody and the amount they smile when they don't. People smile at 3 or 4 times the amount, and they smile differently, a much wider smile. The eyes twinkle. We know this. There are some people when they date, even if they do the 50% right, this doesn't kick in. They naturally don't produce this resonance. The best way I can describe it to you is if you've ever been to a wedding and you've walked past the speaker when it's blasting music. You hear the music, but you also feel the pulsating rhythm. It's literally reverberating on your body. That's what the resonance is. The noise, the sound of the music is the actual words that you're saying. The resonance is this mood that you're creating by the subtle things that you're doing, the small hand movements, the way that you sit. You start speaking more cute. You laugh at things you would never laugh at because you would never think they were really funny, but because you like her or you like him, you're motivated to be nicer and to be more approving. And all of a sudden, you're curious about things you would never have been interested in because, well, you know the deal. Many people, about 5% of all dating people, significantly struggle with resonance. So they date and people say, I don't feel the emotional connection. How many people here on this call have heard this? Every single one, 150 times. But what do? Shrug our shoulders. Let's make a hachlata today. We are going to come up with a package. If somebody says, I'm not feeling it, or somebody says, he was okay, the dates were fine, but I just don't feel any connection. That person is struggling with resonance. There are different reasons why, most likely because they're what's called preoccupied. Their brain is a little bit caught up in its own processes because it's worried, because it's unsure. Different reasons basically stops the person from being natural. And so the person comes across as one-dimensional or two-dimensional instead of 3 or 4-dimensional, which is what you need for a date to really go well. And so we can help people to compensate, give them the skills to create more resonance, that even though naturally they're not like that, they can do some of those things anyway if they know that they need to. They can make a point of being more sympathetic, of expressing more empathy, of showing a greater caring, of paying more attention to small things the other person cares about, to show that you're not just thinking about yourself. We would have, just on this one alone, 100 shidduchim more this year alone, simply if we were able to conquer that problem.
Okay.
The way I described it to this person who dated 90 people, I said, because some of the examples I gave he wasn't getting. So I said to him, you drive? He said, yes. I said, imagine you forgot to take down the handbrake. I'm sure it's happened to all of you. The car will still go, but it just feels wrong. And eventually you realize, 1 second, something isn't adding up here. Oh, the handbrake. I've done it 100 times. The handbrake doesn't stop you from moving, but it stops you from building up any kind of momentum, because everything is being slowed down and being dragged down by this handbrake. That's what it feels to date without resonance. And we can also tell people who are dating people without resonance. The person likes you, they don't always know how to show it. It's not smart to judge them by your own way of doing things, because this person tells me he really likes you, and if he's not showing it, it's because he's not good at it. Does it make sense to be so quick to think you know what he's... But we don't do this either.
Thank you. Okay, so that leads us to a third
Tell
topic.
you what, Moshe, let me make one more point, which applies to everything, because I should have said it right at the beginning. If there's one thing only, maybe delete everything else I said. There's one thing only. We have to recognize that people are not all the same. People are often radically different. I told this guy, my 90 dates guy, you're dating like you're somebody else. You're dating like everybody else does, and it works for them, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't work for you. You have to date like yourself. Different situation, and whatever they're doing won't work for you. I think if we need to say to everybody, every bocher, every young lady, before they get involved in shidduchim, hopefully yours is going to be the simplest thing, and you meet the first person and everything's going to be fantastic. But don't assume everybody is the same. And if it turns out that things are not the way you thought, don't assume the person you're dating is no good. Ask yourself, have I questioned whether I am dating the way it suits my characteristics? And now on the first date, how are you supposed to question that? But after several times it's happened, it's time to say, maybe you're in that 5%, or in the other 5% of people who have commitment issues, or in the other 5%, because about 20% of people have relationship problems, shidduchim problems. It's about 20%. So it's not a small number. So we need to get out of the idea that there's a way of dating, and everybody who does it this way is going to succeed, because not everybody is the same. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, so our third topic is the length of dating. The question is there any too long or too short in dating? Is there a happy medium that we should be considering? And also we can find often that over dating can lead to hate. It goes downhill. So if there is a need to go on multiple dates, how do we prevent it from going stale? If in that particular case, the couples feel they need more and more dates to get comfortable with each other.
Thank you very much. I find it difficult personally to talk about a happy medium, because I've just said that people are different and really different. And some people will need a lot more time. And then simply to average it out, what does that help us? Right? Because if for one person, 8 dates is more than enough, if another person, it's not even going to begin, then what does it make a difference that the average is whatever it is? What we need to be able to work out is what is right for this person, for this couple. So let me give you a couple of pointers. Number one, I do believe there is no reason to rush. We're not catching a train, especially nowadays where there are many more reasons why things can get complicated. It's not like a Mulligan Zeiten. So I'm not in favor of people being put under pressure, whether that's from parents or from shatranim or from anybody else. Having said that, we do need to understand why some people are dragging it out. There are people who are genuinely convinced that they need more time, when what's really going on is they're stuck. And one of the biggest myths when it comes to dating, and probably in the entire universe, is the idea that time is going to solve the problem. So let me give you an example. Someone tells me they went to their mashpia for advice. I say, stop, let me guess what he said or what she said. Why don't you take a break for 2 weeks? I'm about 50% of the time I'm right. how is time going to solve anything? It's only in a very, very small number of cases that taking a break will solve anything. So another one is, why don't you go on a few more dates and see what happens? And what is this, some kind of magic? So if somebody's struggling to get themselves to a place where they're ready, half the time, it's nothing to do with the fact that they're just need more time to feel comfortable, which is perfectly legitimate. And as I said, there's no reason to deny them that. Half the time, they're stuck. And the extra 3 dates that they're taking is just 3 more dates to completely ruin everything. Because there's a famous English adage, when you're in a hole, stop digging. Well, what you're saying to them is, you're in a hole, why don't you continue digging? That's a great idea. If you're in a hole, that hole is only going to get deeper because you're stuck and you're going to get more stuck. So when people come to me and say, should I agree to more dates? I don't know what more there is to discuss.
Get something, turn off something.
Okay. So I usually say, don't refuse, because at the end of the day, you have to be sensitive and respectful. Shidduchim is a sensitive situation, but turn the conversation towards, okay, let's have 3 dates. What is it we're trying to achieve in these 3 dates? What is it we'd like to clarify? Let's have a goal. If all they want to do is just have another 3 dates to go around in circles, then I'm not saying you can make one rule for every situation, but that is where things so often go wrong. And I've seen it, and I'm sure you have as well. So let me just make one more important point.
Yes.
Many times, what they need when they're asking for more time, they're asking for some kind of insight that's going to shift things in their mind, either towards a yes or towards a no. And it may be that they will get that by spending more time with the other person. But at least 50%, they have already spent untold hours with that person, and it's very unlikely that anything is going to be resolved by simply going on another few dates. In fact, what often happens is those dates turn towards a direction, because we're in polite company, I won't go into detail, but where things end up becoming messy. So I would say extra dates when it's clear that the couple have spent substantial time together and have covered every topic under the sun should be directed towards a clear focus with a clear framework, so that if it becomes clear, for example, that they're not sure if their Yiddishkeit is compatible, then they have a way of being able to speak to someone or come to the dates with a clear list of topics that they're going to work through. And so that the focus is on trying to decide whether you're going to marry them, rather than trying to invent all kinds of more creative and more questionable ways of killing time, because you don't want to actually face the fact that you've got to make a decision.
Okay. One comment is that the Rebbe oftentimes made, there was a haraya sometimes from the Rebbe to take a break from shidduchim. So how would that fit in?
I don't want to be too cynical, but the Rebbe told us many, many things, and we should apply them as we would any other haraya from the Rebbe in an appropriate and applicable manner. It would be like if somebody said, the Rebbe gave a haraya to say chitas. So somebody comes and says, I'm not sure if I should marry the person, and say, well, say chitas. Right? It's abused, like insanely abused, right? Where you take a haraya that the Rebbe gave and it's applied randomly to every situation without any real achrayas. I had this with the Rav, I'm not going to mention from where, this Pesach, the person was dating, the Rav said, come home for Pesach and see what happens. I was convinced that the matzah was going to do absolute wonders to this person's dating clarity. Unfortunately, it turns out matzah doesn't clear your head. It was just that person, I know who this person is. He's a choshev arov. But like I'm saying, you're playing with people's lives. That Rav should have said, it seems like you're stuck. Who could help you to gain clarity? Not come home and drink arba koises. So I'm not being diminishing what the Rebbe said, and as you could imagine, given my background, I've heard of this once or twice, right? What I mean to say is it's being applied in a random way without recognition that these people are struggling and they need really good advice, not a cliche.
Okay, thank you. So that leads us to topic 4, which is dating skills and attitudes. So there often seems to be a gap in the preparedness of Bachrim as opposed to girls when it comes to awareness, education, and maturity in Shidduchim. So firstly, how can we help the Bachrim catch up regarding those issues? And another question more specific regarding Bachrim is that it seems that many of them think that they can't marry the first girl because maybe there's something better that they might be missing out on. Is there something in a situation like that we can do on our end as shadchanim if we feel like this might be the case?
Okay, maybe I should take my own advice about stopping to dig. It is a mystery to me, if I can be honest, why more isn't being done to prepare young people for dating. There are many skills and insights that could be helpful to them. And equally importantly, I think it would be amazing if young people were given some awareness of the ways in which people can get stuck. Hopefully they won't be in that 20% of people who do. But 20% is big enough that people should be aware that it exists and know that they shouldn't just keep going, and they should try to understand why they may be stuck. And without causing too much offense, I think it would be great if parents and shadchanim were also more aware of the kind of things that we're discussing today. So I appreciate this opportunity. There are differences between men and women. You may have noticed I refuse to use the word boy and girl. I can explain why later. And the assumption is that the young men are Neanderthals and are much less worldly, much less sophisticated. And the problem is with them. And it's basically true. The women are better than the men. Simple as that. First of all, they are in general, but when it comes to shidduchim, it's absolutely clear, superior. But that is the deal. And I would humbly suggest that we're better off preparing the women to meet the real men who actually exist, rather than trying to beat them up for being inadequate, even if they are. So I'm going to turn that on its head. Hope you don't mind. I don't think it's realistic, in other words, to give the men a crash course on how to be more worldly and to be more mature, especially when the entire system is conspiring to keep them less worldly and more immature. So unless we're going to turn the whole system on its head, I think we're better off learning how dating is going to survive in this imbalance. The idea that someone would date another person just to gain some dating experience, figure out what they want, is genuinely beyond belief. It goes back to what I said before, that there is something wrong going on here. Sometimes I in my head, I explode. Zu Torah v'zu schora. Is this the best we can do? After 10 years of learning Hasidus 3 hours a day, this is what we've produced. Surely it can be a lot better. Where are they getting these ideas from, and where are the parents? So I think it comes back to us. We're the ones on the call here today. It comes back to us to remind people of the basics. and to stop rewarding bad behavior, because at the moment we kind of do. I'll end this segment with something which I told somebody at the very beginning of this, maybe 12 years ago. This was in a kosher restaurant in Brussels, Belgium. And somebody came over to me and said, Yossi, tell me how I can find a good Jewish girl. I said, I can't tell you for sure, but I've got a hunch that you may want to start by trying to be a good Jewish boy. And I think that if we can get people to step up, to raise their game, to live up to their best instincts, to actually put some of the Hasidus they learned into practice, and to treat people with the reverence that they deserve, I think we would see people. I think they would be responsive. I think we're. I hope my wife won't kill me, but my wife has a policy. If somebody calls up and uses grob language to talk about the appearance of a woman, of a young girl, she puts the phone down. My only criticism of her is that she doesn't slam it down. Right? That could be my daughter you're talking about. How dare you? How about if we put the phone down on every person that spoke in such a manner about somebody else's child? Let me tell you, it wouldn't happen so fast, but we all put up with it. We make excuses. I think we need to hold people to account. Can we all be better, nicer, more courteous, more dignified, more sincere? I think we can make the world a better place.
And in terms of the girls, you wanted to turn things around and prepare the girls for the Bachrim of today's day and age. What should we be? How should we be preparing the girls for that?
Get off their back. I deal with this all the time. I mean, all the complaints. The men are no good. I say, you're right. Okay. The alternative is to marry a woman. I don't know what to tell you. Right? I agree. And maybe we should get the men to be more with it. I get it. But look at the trajectory. Look at what those young women have been through, even though they're often younger. They had more practical experience. They've been working. Many Bachrim have not had any meaningful job if you exclude being a kitchen schlep, which is just another word form for child abuse, right? There is a disparity. And women are more mature than men to start with. This is not a chiddush of mine. Just check when girls are bas mitzvah. So there is a problem. And I think the solution isn't to try to think we can solve it just like that. What I think we need to do is recognize that men will grow up, and you've got to see some potential and not reject somebody because they've not yet had the experiences that you've had. I don't think a crash course for men is the answer, is basically what I'm saying. I think a course in decency and morality would be good, but you're not going to give a person a life of experience that they've never had. Men are cocooned. The women are in the kitchen from a very young age. They're much more responsible. They're expected to pull themselves together from a much younger age. We pander to the guys, and then we wonder. We're basically reaping what we sowed.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, so that leads us to topic 5 of getting help. So if you can describe the areas where facilitators can do a good job of coaching themselves, and when facilitators or shadchanim should recommend that the singles get professional counseling. In other words, where does the facilitator's scope of practice end?
Okay, this is a really, really difficult one. I'm going to explain to you why. Behektim. This is the most controversial thing I can probably say. America is in love with therapy. We need to get a little more real. Therapy is absolutely essential for people who have got real, recognizable, definable, emotional, or psychological problems. It is not the answer for everything. I have almost never come across anybody in hundreds of people I've dealt with who's ever gone to therapy for a shidduch problem and come up with a solution. Never. So if somebody has a real problem, that means it's in a book somewhere, yeah? Then they need to get therapy, and especially the specific expert therapy specific to their challenge. If that's anxiety, depression, or bipolar, or whatever. But if not, therapy is not the answer. Now, what we need is to figure out why they're struggling, help them to understand what's going on, and develop basic skills to stop them being a victim of their own stuckness. And we would see miracles. We would double literally our engagements per month. The only problem I've got, which is why I said it's difficult, is that who is helping the facilitators to gain their own know-how to be able to properly support the singles and their parents and their families? Now, I used to think I controlled the world. I think I was about 6 at the time. Thankfully, I grew out of that. So I recognize I don't have the ability to just magically make this happen. But it would be amazing if I woke up tomorrow and someone's decided to really create a proper support mechanism for facilitators and for shadchanim and for people who want to help people, not just send them on more dates. Because in the end, if we had properly equipped facilitators, this would be literally like, I don't know, winning the lottery 100 times over. This would be a game changer. Because I want to make it very clear. If every one of you send me just one person tomorrow, I will have a meltdown, okay? There is no way I can do it. So please don't, okay? We need to create a very broad base of competency here. I think people can. This does not need, I went to 10 years to university. You don't need to be 10 years at university to understand the things that I'm talking about. I've got a feeling most of you understood me very well today. So I'd love to think that we could share together, all of us, what we know to try to create a cohort of people who really are capable of helping. What Lubavitch has a great expression called "Aroishlappen from Blotter," right? To drag people out of the mud where they got stuck.
Thank you. And that leads us to our last topic of older singles. So what advice could we give to an older woman, older female singles in their 30s who have heard every Lubavitcher name already?
Okay, so I have 3 responses. I've basically written 3 responses down. Number 1, I wrote, yup, they heard names. Maybe they should go beyond names. I know the person who wrote that didn't mean to play into that cliche, but I couldn't resist it. It was the temptation was way too great. I would say that we do have a part of that problem, right? That we've reduced everyone to names, we put them all in boxes, and we need to push back against that. Yeah, I know this one. What exactly do you know besides for your prejudices? Let's just understand. Again, let's be facilitators of people getting married, not facilitators of people's vices, of basically indulging their worst habits, at least admirable instincts. Number 2, it is true that many of these people have dated the people who are being referred to, that kind of list, and they were inadequate. They were inadequate. What are we doing to help them become adequate? That is basically my entire message today. That person isn't sending that person on a date and say, date them anyway. Why? All my friends have dated him and he's XYZ. But we can change that by reaching out to people and say, you know what? You need to figure it out because everyone says they've dated you and you're not an easy person to date. So let's figure out what's going on. And finally, is it so terrible to think beyond Lubavitch? I had a meeting a few months ago with Rabbi Yossi Ives, and he claims this is the solution to the entire shidduch crisis. Well, I totally disagree with him, but I do think that he's right, that it's not for us to tell people who they should choose to date, but I think maybe people should be able to put their prejudice aside for the sake of their own happiness. And if they can't, well, that's another way of being stuck. If it's okay to end on, I'm not rushing anywhere, by the way, but just for me, because of I want to honor your time, to end with a Gemara, a Mishnah actually that I'm very passionate about. The Gemara tells a story about Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi, that he was a Megadol Yisayma. He took in an orphan girl into his home, and there was no such thing as adoption. There isn't even in halacha such a concept, but there is a concept of giving a home to an orphan. And this was left without her parents, and so he raised her. He didn't raise her like his own child. He raised her like an orphan. And she grew to be an adult, and he wanted to marry off, and he had a son, marriageable age. So he said to his son, would you be interested in marrying this young lady? He said, she's ugly. No way. This is in the Gemara. Nothing's changed, huh? Said, no way, she's ugly. So Rabbi Shmuel was shocked. He thought, 1 second, I didn't realize she's ugly. I'm not doing my job properly. He went and took her to a hairdresser. He took her to a makeup artist. He took her to a dressmaker. And he invested properly in her the way he would have done for his own daughter. His son came back like a year later and saw this young lady and said, my gosh, she's gorgeous. Why have you not introduced me to her? He said, she's the one you said was ugly a year ago. And the end of the story gives me goosebumps every time. The Mishnah says, Bacha Rabbi Yishmael wept. Benois Yisrael noisheim, Elashana nius menavlosam. Jewish women are beautiful. It's the poverty that makes them ugly. I have a chiddush. The poverty in this case refers to the poverty of the person who looks upon the person and only sees ugliness when they should see beauty. It's based on the Sikha of the Rebbe. Benois Yisrael nois hein. Our young men and women are beautiful, but our attitudes are messing everything up. And I think we have it within ourselves to say today, we are going to ask for people to raise their game, to treat every person they meet as Benois Yisrael nois hein. We should not allow anybody to speak in a grob fashion about somebody else's son or daughter. It should be an absolute no-no. There should be no such thing as saying, if I tell you how many of my clients have told me it was one and done, do you know, I've never criticized them once, but every time I cringe. If I was a bit more emotional, I would cry. You're speaking about somebody's child. What the heck is wrong with you? One and done. What does that mean? What is this? Like you open a pack of chips and you didn't like it, so you said, that's it? We have to treat each and every one of our children like the gems that they are, protect them, nurture them, and demand that they are respected. I'm willing to promise you, if we do this, you won't believe. We won't talk about a shidduch crisis. We'll talk about a shortage of wedding halls.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Ives, for really some incredible insight on such a broad range of topics. And really like to thank everyone joining us today. And also share that this Zoom is being recorded. So for those that couldn't make it, we'll be sharing a link a little bit later that everyone can see. And definitely want to encourage everyone to visit datewell.org to get more information and really delve into the topics that we touched upon today and acquire the knowledge, because a lot of the things that were discussed today can be we can all improve our our awareness of them on the site. And in Mirz Hashem, regarding getting more training for Shadchanim, I understand there's something being worked on, so details will be followed with regards to that. Any closing remarks, Rabbi Ives?
I want to just ask Mechila for everybody for my outspokenness. I'm sure you understand where it's coming from, but I appreciate that I'm a bit passionate about these things, and maybe some people feel or could feel that I was a little too direct or a little too opinionated. I just wanted to smash the stereotype that English people are shy in retiring.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. And we'll be sending the link shortly, hopefully tomorrow. So thank you everyone for joining. Yeah. Kol tov.